India has mounted a strong diplomatic offensive against Pakistan at the United Nations Human Rights Council, accusing Islamabad of institutionalizing terrorism as an instrument of state policy while exposing its human rights record in Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. At the 62nd session of the UNHRC in Geneva, India dismissed Pakistan's allegations on Jammu and Kashmir, instead drawing global attention to cross-border terrorism, the worsening situation in PoJK, and Pakistan's continued use of terrorist proxies. A report.
India launched a sharp attack on Pakistan at the United Nations Human Rights Council, accusing it of harboring, financing and sponsoring terrorism for decades. Speaking during the 62nd session of the UNHRC in Geneva, New Delhi rejected Pakistan's allegations on Jammu and Kashmir, accusing Islamabad of spreading misinformation to deflect attention from its own internal crisis, state-sponsored terrorism and deteriorating human rights situation in Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. India's first Secretary to the United Nations, Anupama Singh, described Pakistan as a living example of a Frankenstein state, facing the consequences of the very extremist groups it nurtured. Her remarks came against the backdrop of repeated admissions by senior Pakistani leaders, including Defence Minister Khwaja Asif, acknowledging that Pakistan had trained and supported terrorist organizations for decades as part of its security policy. India has consistently maintained that terror groups such as Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed have operated from Pakistani soil with state patronage, carrying out attacks against India while enjoying safe havens across the border.
Mr. Vice President, this is the country where the sitting defense minister boasts of hosting, training and deploying terrorists as state policy, and yet Pakistan calls itself a victim of terrorism. Indeed, a paradox which only Pakistan could sustain. It is a living example of a Frankenstein state which is shocked when its own monster bites back.
The Indian diplomat also highlighted the worsening situation in Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, saying the region has become a symbol of political repression, economic neglect and denial of basic rights. In recent months, PoJK has witnessed widespread protests led by Jammu Kashmir Joint Awami Action Committee over soaring electricity tariffs, inflation, wheat shortages and rising taxes. Demonstrations in Rawalakot, Muzaffarabad and other towns have repeatedly been met with heavy-handed crackdowns, internet restrictions and mass arrests. Rights groups and local activists have alleged excessive use of force against protesters demanding affordable electricity, employment and constitutional rights. Referring to the unrest, Singh said demands for bread, electricity and dignity were met with bullets and brutality, adding that decades of forced occupation and suppression had pushed the region into turmoil.
The ongoing tragedy in Rawalakot, the killing of hundreds of civilians and the brutal crackdown across Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir are the predictable outcome of a system built on forcible occupation and sustained through repression. Decades of military land grabs, demographic engineering and the denial of basic freedoms have brought matters to a point where even demands for bread, electricity, rights and dignity are met with bullets and brutality. This should surprise no one. An illegal and illegitimate occupation can be sustained only through force.
India also questioned Pakistan's continued reliance on the Indus Waters Treaty while simultaneously pursuing cross-border terrorism. India has also argued that 6-decade-old Indus Waters Treaty must reflect present-day realities, including changing technological, demographic and security conditions. Reaffirming India's position, Singh said Jammu and Kashmir is an integral and inalienable part of India and urged Pakistan to end its obsession with India and instead focus on addressing its own governance failures, extremism and deteriorating human rights record.
Mr. Vice President, our position on Indus Water Treaty is well known. It defies logic that a state which exports terror as an instrument of policy continues to demand the privileges of cooperation predicated on goodwill and friendship. It is equally undeniable that the treaty is now outdated. No technical arrangement can remain frozen in time while the world around it is transformed. A treaty negotiated in 1960 cannot be treated as a perpetual entitlement, which is insulated from accountability, detached from present-day realities, and untouched by the profound changes of the past 6 decades.
India's intervention at the UN Human Rights Council underscored New Delhi's continued effort to expose Pakistan's record on terrorism and human rights before the international community. By shifting the focus to Pakistan's support for terror networks and the unrest in Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, India reinforced its long-standing position that Islamabad must end cross-border terrorism and address its own internal crisis instead of attempting to internationalize the issue of Jammu and Kashmir.